Hi, Arcfieldweather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, February 13th. It looks like high pressure ridging, which has been a dominant player in the southeastern part of the nation, affecting much of the eastern third in terms of the overall temperature pattern, will continue to do so, will continue to be a big player over the next 7 to 10 days or so. There certainly are some signs that the overall pattern turns colder after that, late in the month of February into the month of March. But for the next 7 to 10 days or so, there'll be some more quite mild weather in many parts of the eastern U.S., thanks in large part to this stubborn ridge of high pressure that's been sitting in the upper part of the atmosphere over the western Atlantic into the southeastern U.S. Let's start off today's video discussion with a look at the radar loop across the nation. Couple of areas to highlight here. First of all, there was a low pressure area that moved over the Appalachian Mountains into the southern half of the Mid-Atlantic region late yesterday and last night with primarily rainfall. It is moving away this morning, basically a dry day for much of the eastern half of the nation. There's a relatively weak system spinning over the southwestern states with some snow in the Rocky Mountain states, and then some rain down across the southwestern part of Arizona, the southern part of California. Generally a weak system, and generally not a lot going on across the nation as we begin the new work week. Well, let's take a look at last night's ensemble run of the European model. It's the 0Z ensemble European version that we're looking at the 500 millibar height anomalies. Going forward for the next several days here, we'll go even beyond the 10-day period to see what possible changes may develop by the time we get to the end of February into the beginning stages of March. Remember, on this particular kind of a map, all the oranges represent high pressure ridging, higher heights than normal aloft. This particular area is an upper level low associated with that coastal storm that is now moving away. And here's that system out across the southwestern states, causing some rain and snow. Now, let's move forward over the next several days. And again, we'll have a lot of ridging continuing, as has been the case for the past several weeks. Ridging in the eastern part of the nation. This is by the time we get to the midweek here. And we're looking at temperatures on Wednesday, for example, in the 60s. Places like D.C., possibly Philadelphia, New York City as well. Colder than normal, colder lower heights than normal as well across the interior western U.S. But this has been an ongoing theme here in the overall weather pattern, with ridging in the east and maybe some lower heights than normal out in the western U.S. Now, let's move forward here, and we'll see as we get into the late week. Here we are, Friday morning. Strong frontal system will be crossing the middle part of the nation, move into the eastern U.S. on Friday, likely with decent amount of rain ahead of it, and then turns colder. But as has been the case for the eastern U.S. past several weeks, a cold shot that follows this late week frontal passage will be brief. Saturday looks cold in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, but by the time we get to Sunday and Monday, it'll start to rebound again with, you guessed it, high pressure ridging, higher heights than normal, starting to redevelop back in the eastern part of the nation. Here we are next Sunday. Again, that cold frontal passage, excuse me, it looks like it'll be maybe later in the day on Friday, brings in a cold air mass, but only for about one day, Saturday, into the eastern U.S. Now, here we are now a week from now to next Monday, February 20th, and we start to see some subtle changes here. We still have ridging hanging on over the eastern half of the nation, going all the way out into the middle of next week. And again, remember, we said that'll remain the dominant theme in the east: higher heights than normal, higher pressures than normal for the next 7 to 10 days. As we go beyond that towards the latter part of February, now we're all the way out to the end of next week. We still have that ridge here, but watch this area of lower than normal heights over Canada. It starts to, excuse me, really kind of show some muscle here and expand to the south. And here we are now towards the end of the month of February. Pretty expansive area of lower heights than normal certainly dropping through the northern U.S. by the time we get to the end of the month, and it tends to squash that ridge over the southeastern U.S., over the southern states. Maybe pushes a little bit farther to the south, allowing for some more cold air, some more sustained cold air moving into the northern U.S., all the way out now into the end of February. This is all the way out 2 weeks from today to Monday, February 27th. Let's go out a little bit farther in time, and here we go. A pretty expansive area of colder than normal conditions all the way into the northern U.S. by the time we get to the end of February. Now, let's take a look at last night's operational run of the Canadian model. This is first looking at 850 millibar temperature anomalies. The red represents above normal temperatures, and the blues and purples below normal. This area below normal, as we begin the new work week here, is associated with that upper level low over the southwestern states. But look at all this warmer than normal conditions here. And again, by the time we get to the midweek here, this is Friday morning's forecast map. We have a very mild day coming. D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, mild relative to normal. Probably be in the 60s for highs on Wednesday, maybe even Thursday as well in much of the mid-Atlantic I-95 corridor region, way above normal, but a lot of cold air sitting across the interior western part of the nation as we get into later this week. And the difference between the two is this strong cold front right here cutting across the Mississippi Valley by the time we get into Thursday. Colder than normal to the west, warmer than normal to the east, and that front will certainly be kind of an active front. This is by Friday morning that strong front reaches the eastern third of the nation. It'll have like a decent amount of rain on its front side, maybe even to change over to snow on its backside in upstate portions of Pennsylvania, for example, New York State, interior sections of the mid-Atlantic Northeast U.S. could see a situation of rain changing to snow with this late week frontal passage. Then we go into the weekend and we have a very short cold air blast here into the northeastern part of the nation. But as has been the case in recent weeks, it will only last a day or two. And by the time we get to next Sunday, we're already above normal in the mid-Atlantic region and really throughout much of the eastern half of the nation. Well, let's wrap up by looking at the surface maps from the zero-Z run of the Canadian model. And here is that storm that caused a decent amount of rain in the eastern part of the nation. The Appalachians were hit. Some areas had some accumulating snow in those higher elevation mountains of the Appalachians. Moving away this morning, another low pressure area over the southwestern states. But generally, not a heck of a lot going on across the nation. Now, once we get into the middle of the week, we'll start to see the effects of this strong frontal system. Again, colder than normal air to the west, warmer than normal to the east. This is Wednesday evening forecast map, and very warm. A place like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, all ahead of this next frontal system. And that next front becomes kind of an active front here by the time we get to Friday morning. Here we'll have a lot of moisture pumped up ahead of that frontal system, and that will result in a decent amount of rain throughout much of the eastern third of the nation. Thursday night, Friday morning. Again, there can be a changeover to some accumulating snow. Interior sections of the mid-Atlantic, interior sections of the northeast U.S. during the day on Friday as that front comes through. It moves on off the coast, and Saturday, indeed, a cold day in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, relative to what we'll experience on Wednesday and Thursday, for example. But as has been the case in recent weeks, that cold shot will be short-lived. By the time we get to Sunday, and this is the Sunday forecast map, we'll start to get normal to above normal temperatures again showing up in the mid-Atlantic region. So continuation of the, in general, warmer than normal pattern across the eastern third of the nation, the eastern half of the nation for the next 7 to 10 days or so. At the end of the month, going into March, there are some signs colder air, more sustained colder air can make its way into much of the northern U.S. Again, not until the end of the month of February going into the month of March. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.